A dog with odour recognition has been trained to recognise the target odour as being very valuable. In scientific terms, it has been classically conditioned in that it has gone from something that the dog has no value for to something that triggers a positive conditioned emotional response. In layman's terms, the target odour is a paycheck, and when he finds it, he gets excited because he knows he can cash it in for his reward. Odour recognition is by far the simplest thing to teach our dogs in relation to nosework and detection because it's just conditioning. In this video, we're going to discuss the pros and cons of 3 broad methods of doing so. The pairing of the target odours with the dog's primary reward is a very common method of conditioning odour recognition in nosework. The dog's food and the target odour are contained within the same training aid, and while the dog is working to get the food, he's also taking in the target odours. Over time, the pairing is removed, though it's often reintroduced for various reasons, and the dog theoretically works to odour the same as they were for the paired odour. The problem with pairing is that we're teaching dogs that it's worthwhile to search for something other than odour. Worse still, the things we use to pair with odour will be used as intentional distractions in competition. This is often viewed as needlessly confusing for dogs for obvious reasons, but if pairing is brief, it's a relatively simple procedure to ensure the dogs don't alert or show undue interest in their primary reward used for pairing, a process called proofing. It's worth noting that the things used to pair with odour are done so because the dog finds them inherently valuable. So even if we don't use pairing as a method, we'd still have to go through the same proofing process on whatever the dog finds valuable. The more, dare I say, scientific method of creating odour recognition is the use of a bridge to classically condition a positive emotional response to it. A verbal mark or clicker is used to create value in the target odour. It takes very few repetitions of this to create odour recognition. The reason it's more scientific is because we're using a classically conditioned stimulus to classically condition another stimulus, that is, scent. A common argument against marker training is that we don't really know what we're marking. We can't see odour, so how can we know that our marker timing is correct enough for our dog to understand that the target scent is the discriminative stimulus? Fortunately, by using a predictable odour source, we know with certainty where we should be marking our dog. That is the point of the highest concentration of odour. The marker is not only used to condition odour recognition, but it can also be used to shape the desired response. In fact, using a marker is the only real reliable and consistent way to also reinforce proximity to source as a criterion in the response. The less common method of creating odour recognition is through reward orientation. In this case, the dog's reward, food or toy, suddenly appears at the odour source as the dog sniffs it. This is similar to marker training in terms of length of time before the dog develops odour recognition, but it does require better timing skills and it risks contaminating the search area. Where you're most likely to see this today is through the use of various types of scent wall. While the dog searches on one side of the wall, the trainer remains on the other side with the dog's primary reward, and when the dog works to the target odour, the reward is produced at that location. After a while, the trainer stays on the same side as the dog and throws the reward from behind. Though in some instances, this is only used as a way to build a response for a dog with existing odour recognition. In this instance, the requirement of good timing and the risk of contaminating the search area is not an issue. However, responses built on a scent wall with reward from source methodology may not transition well to other areas. Understanding odour recognition as being classically conditioned should hopefully pave the way for you to solve odour-related training issues. Let me talk through 2 common ones. My dog doesn't always show a change of behaviour and work to source. It's like he doesn't even smell the target odours, but it's only in certain situations. If I had a dog that was only inconsistently responding to my clicker, that tells me one of 2 things. Either I have failed to give it enough value so as to compete with any alternative means of rewards in the environment, or my dog is experiencing enough stress so as to shut off his appetitive reflexes in particular situations. To expand on the first point, if I've charged the click from my clicker to equal 1 measly piece of kibble, then I shouldn't be surprised if my dog is more interested in competing motivators in the environment. However, if my click equals varying values and quantities of reinforcement, say a handful of steak on one click and 1 piece of cheese on another, my dog should possess far more value for the click comparatively. The same goes for odour. In addition, remember that our dogs don't respond to classically conditioned stimulus based off of what we have in the moment, but instead based on what we've historically given them. As for the second point, classically conditioned stimulus is suppressed when an animal is stressed. If you notice your dog is not reliably responding whenever you're working in areas near traffic, for example, take a step back from Nosework and maybe think about working through some counter conditioning and desensitization in that situation. As a caveat to that second point, sometimes increasing the dog's historic value for odour can help them overcome contextual stress too. My dog is more interested in birch than anise or clove. Why? The simple answer to a dog showing more interest in one classically conditioned stimuli is that his history of reinforcement for it seems to outweigh that of the other classically conditioned stimulus. This is often the case for birch because a lot of trainers begin their training with it first, only to introduce anise and clove later on. If we were to attempt to quantify the dog's experience with all three odours, we'd most likely uncover that the dog just has more value for birch because he has more experience with it, and thus more opportunities for reinforcement. The solution should be simple. Practice more with anise and clove and use higher value and or bigger quantities of reward for them to try to balance the scales. Thanks for watching, my fellow nose workers. If you have any questions you want answered in another video, please comment below. Happy sniffing!